Alright, what video are we doing? I always wanted to do one of these videos. Hopefully I can pull this off. Alright, let's do it. I'm ready. Me. Me. Gavin as a service. Home Assistant release video, take 7. Home Assistant 2026.2 just dropped, and we're going to take a look at all the new features and announcements after this. Hi, welcome to my channel, Gavin as a Service, where I like to talk about all the tech that we have in our homes. And today, we're going to take a look at the brand new release from Home Assistant 2026.2. Of course, this is in beta still, so the version and the notes I'm looking at are all beta. All these features may make it through. I expect most of them to make it through, but I wouldn't be surprised if they get tweaked along the way. And first up, a new way to view your home. Now, what they've been working on over this time is a new home dashboard. They've been putting it together piece by piece, and now it's finally time to make it the default dashboard. And I'm okay with this. I don't use this dashboard myself. I've always had a custom dashboard, but they've come a long way, and on a new install of Home Assistant, this is now the default. I look forward to seeing what more they do with this dashboard to make it that much better, but it's only going to get better from here. Next up, they now have a default area called devices. Now this is cool because when you assign devices to various areas, they've always gone into that area, but you never had an idea of devices that weren't assigned to any area. I mean, you could go in the device list and filter them out and try and get an idea, but now they have an area that's just called devices, and all the devices in here are not assigned to other areas. So then you can easily go through and pick them, assign them as appropriate. So that's another new feature with this release. Another thing they've done with this release is made user interface tweaks and changes to give it a bit more modern look. So now it's going to be a little more flat design. They've tweaked a few of the colors. You know, sometimes the smallest things make the biggest difference, and I'm pretty sure you're going to notice it right off the bat. I believe one of the changes is the header. Instead of it being their default, I think it was blue color, it's now just a clear white. It blends in a lot more and doesn't stick out as much. So I expect these kind of tweaks to just be ongoing every month. And next up is what I've been excited about. This is one of the bigger things I thought that was announced that I want to see where it goes, but it's the device database. So what they've done here is they've put it in the labs area, and they've made it as an opt-in experience, which means that no data will be sent unless you turn this on. Now that's great for those of us that don't like to send a lot of data, but I highly recommend you turn this on. So what the device database is, it's going to be collecting information about all the devices in all of our smart homes. And they put it into this database, and it collects the things like, you know, the entities that device use, how many of those devices you have, you know, and other little things. And they'll be filling in information in this database and almost becoming like a community driven database of devices, which will help us make better decisions on device purchases in the future. You know, this may expose bad companies and they might not like this, but it'll also make the best companies rise to the top. I'm really looking forward to where they go with this and where what they do with this information. Like, can you imagine you add a device to this and Home Assistant knows everything about that device, and it will now present you with a custom card made just to that device? That would be awesome. So I highly encourage everybody to opt into this, and they're very open about the information. If you look at it, you can even go to the database and see how many devices and what devices are in there as it is. I believe they have a few thousand in there just through their beta testing, and once this goes public, it's gonna grow big time. So keep an eye on this. Let's see where they go with this in the future. I'm looking forward to what they do. The next big announcement and big change they made, and this is going to take a little time for us all to get used to, but add-ons are now called apps. Say it with me. Add-ons are now called apps. I know Frank has been talking about this. I believe he did videos about it. He had forum posts about it. You know, they were toying with the idea of renaming them, and they have finally done it. And in this release, you are going to see now all your add-ons will now be called apps. Now, apps and integrations are two different things, right? Apps run alongside Home Assistant, and integrations run in Home Assistant, allowing Home Assistant to connect to your devices or services. Now, I think the reason why they did this was because add-ons was a little confusing to people, and people are more used to the term apps. So you can expect to see, instead of an add-on store in the future, we may have an app store in the future. And who knows where we go from there. I know some big things are coming. Just keep an eye on this space. Another update they made was the purpose-specific triggers and conditions. I had a hard time saying that one, but purpose-specific triggers and conditions. They've been working on this, I believe, since 2025.12. And it's still a labs feature right now, but they've expanded the number of items you can choose from, and they've also added purpose-specific conditions now. And what this is doing is just making it easier to write your automations, using regular wording and stuff like that. They've expanded it to have more. So new triggers include things like calendars, person, vacuum, and then new conditions. Well, there's a whole bunch of new conditions. You can see them all listed here. So look forward to this, but remember, it's a labs feature, so it's something you have to turn on the labs to see it. And if you're interested, make sure you check that out. I always like to see new cards, and they've introduced a new card. This one's called the distribution card. I just don't know how I can explain this, but let's take a look at it. It will make more sense when you take a look at it. It allows you to take a bunch of things, a bunch of entities with a value, and it pretty much adds them up and then shows you how much of the total each entity does. Hopefully the picture explains it to you better than I did, but as you can see, you could have a bunch of power entities, and it will show you how much each entity out of the total power draw, how much each one is using. That being said, I can see it being used in a few different places in my dashboard. So I'm going to play around with this when it comes out, when I finally get my hands on it, and I will see how it goes. So with every release, there's always new integrations. So let's take a look at the new integrations list. Just want to point out Cloudflare R2 is now a backup destination. So that's a nice thing, but make sure you always take a look at this list. See what's new. Maybe you have a new device. Maybe you'll see a device in here. What I usually notice is I'll see a device in here that looks interesting that I never knew about. And then I'll go look into it and see, is it something I want to get, right? Moving on, there's always noteworthy improvements to existing integrations. Just want to call out the ESP Home update, the Music Assistant update that's getting a lot of love. Look out for the new release for Music Assistant. It's going to have some big features coming with that. But make sure you always scan this list and you can see, some of the extra. Sometimes they add new entities, new features to existing integrations. Always a good thing to see. There's always the backward incompatibility changes. I always call these breaking changes, but I always scan this section and see what may break or what changes they made to integrations I have currently installed. Even things like here, the group's behavior, this could affect certain people. So this is something I always scan before I upgrade. I highly recommend you spend some time, just check that out. So that pretty much sums up what I wanted to cover on the new release. Home Assistant 2026.2, the February release. It's only the second release of the year, but so many things came with this release. Remember to always back up. One thing I do is I sometimes just on my production environment, I skip the first one. I wait for the first 0.1 release because I usually find that some things break in the first one, but they get fixed really fast. And usually by the Friday, a new release comes out and it's fixed by then. So if your production environment is that critical to you, then wait for the .1. So hopefully you got something out of this video. Hopefully I explained something that you may have missed. But if you like this video or any of the videos on this channel, just make sure to hit that subscribe button. It won't hurt. But until next time, take care. Home Assistant release video take 53.